1999, NATO promised its. Today I want to talk to you about the destruction of international law. Then the news in recent days and weeks has been full of reports about the current wars with Ukraine, Palestine, Venezuela and Iran being the key words. The escalating international situation with the potential to escalate into World War III at any moment is like an update, a continuation of what began in the 1990s with the wars to destroy Yugoslavia. The question of what the promises of the global West are worth has been around since well before the current sham negotiations between the US and the Iran, and well before the farce of the Minsk agreements. In 1999, NATO promised that it would not, quote, advance 1 inch to the east. And in March 1999, just in time before its invasion of Yugoslavia, it quickly admitted Poland, Czechia, and Hungary into the military alliance. 4 years ago, the US, NATO, and the German government suddenly claimed to have rediscovered international law, but only for the purpose of accusing Russia of having destroyed decades of peace in Europe. They themselves destroyed this peace in 1999 with their NATO aggression against Yugoslavia, something they want to suppress from public consciousness. I said in various speeches at the time that this was the door opener for further imperialist wars. And then the commander-in-chief of the aggression forces, General Wesley Clark, confirmed this after a visit to the Pentagon in 2001, where he was told that the US would quote, take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq, then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finally Iran. Apart from the timetable, we arrived at exactly this situation. As the new world moves toward a multipolar order, the trend towards the de-dollarization continues, with emerging economies gaining confidence and influence, forcing Washington to relinquish its monetary throne. The Rand Corporation is one of the largest US military think tanks. And in a study of this think tank, it concludes that the once unchallenged military superiority of the US is waning. The EU and the UK want dominance Europe, and to achieve this need, they need a weak Russia. For their own global ambitions, they want a semi-colonial Russia as a hinterland and source of raw materials. Russian historian Dmitry Drenin wrote on July the 19th in 2025, "Many people today talk about humanity heading towards toward the Third World War, meaning that something similar to what happened in the 20th century lies ahead of us. However, war is constantly changing its appearance. In reality, the world war is already here, even if not everyone has realized it. The pre-Cold War period ended in 2040 for Russia, in 2017 for China, and in 2023 for Iran. Since then, the spread and intensity of modern warfare has been growing. The West is unable to accept the loss of its global hegemony. Countries that refuse to submit to Western command are attacked militarily, most recently Venezuela, a close trading partner of China, Cuba and Iran. The invasion of Venezuela and the abduction of its president Nicolás Maduro shows parallels to the regime change coup d'etat led by US NGOs in 2000, when President Slobodana Mилошевиќ was kidnapped by the new puppet government, taken to The Hague and put on trial before a kangaroo court. Another parallel can be seen in the preparation for war against Iran. Here, the US demands were designed from the outset of abstracted diplomatic solution, in the expectation that Iran would capitulate to US military power due to its weakness. In 1999, NATO's aggression was preceded by the so-called Rambouillet negotiations, which were intended to force Yugoslavia in a secret annex to an agreement to grant NATO complete freedom of action and movement on its territory, thereby surrendering its sovereignty. It is to President Milošević's lasting credit that he did not play along with this false game. Contrary to his campaign promises to end wars and not to start new ones, especially regime change operations, US President Trump has shown with the attack on Iran in the summer of 2025, the kidnapping of Venezuelan President Maduro, the strangulation measures against Cuba, and most recently the renewed war against Iran and other neighboring countries. He is worthily following in the footsteps of his war criminal predecessors and in his own presidency. His movement deserves a new name, not MAGA, but MAFA, Make American Fail Again. The EU enters into numerous cooperation agreements with NATO, and they march in lockstep. The brutal enforcement of NATO's exclusive propaganda view is directed against citizens, media, organizations, and anyone who holds a different view. The EU has now placed more than 2,700 individuals and organizations on sanctions lists. Those sanctioned lose all their rights, confiscation of assets, account freezing, passport surrender, prohibition of assistance from closed associates, all without trial, without charges, hearing, or defense. This repressive policy is a mockery of the Sunday speeches about democracy, freedom of expression, and the rule of law. On contrary, it points the way to an authoritarian state, if not a new form of fascism. The EU defends free elections, but only as long as the results suit it. Look at Romania. In Hungary and Slovakia, too, the EU Commission wants to bring forces loyal to the EU and NATO back to power. Any country that joins the EU can expect to be subjugated and lose its sovereignty. The demands on Serbia to recognize its province Kosovo, which was separated in violation of international law as a separate state, and to end its friendly relations to the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China, give a foretaste of what the country can expect under the definitive joke of Brussels. Let us preserve the heritage and legacy of our friend and comrade, the great Slobodan Mилошевиќ. Let us defend freedom and national sovereignty, solidarity with all anti-imperialists, fighters for liberation and independence, friendship with Russia and China. Thank you.